Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla, let's go over the market, and let's figure out what is happening and what we can expect moving forward. So with that being said and done, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit the like button as it does help a lot. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, my membership section on YouTube is live. The link is down below if you're interested, of course. Just for $3 a month, you get access to my intraday thoughts, updates, posts, options flow, etc. throughout the day. Every single day the market is open for Tesla and sometimes others as well, like Netflix, like I mentioned the other day. So with that being said, though, let's jump into a Tesla closing the day with a nice, pretty respectable 2.12% up, a green day, I guess. Closing at 193.57 per share, which compared to the market is kind of in line with the market more or less. So, ladies and gentlemen, what does this all mean? So let's go over here first, right? So let's talk about it. So first and foremost, let's talk about the daily chart, or we talk about the 65-minute chart, or even the 4-hour charts. The 4-hour chart is the one we've been looking at for a while, right? I've been talking about how we're potentially, or not potentially, literally inside this channel, and how, as long as we're in this channel, the possibility of coming to as low as, about 182, 183, something like that is a possibility to set up the right shoulder. Technically, coming down to even like 170 is a possibility, but how I personally didn't see that happening. But what happened today? Well, we broke out of this channel, right? Now, initially, the breakout was a little bit suspicious because we broke out in the morning and then we actually came back and it looked like for a second we were about to collapse back into the channel, which would have been quite bearish because it would have been a false breakout, and false breakouts, as I'm sure we are at this point, well aware, are obviously pretty bearish. Those are not good. You don't want to see a false breakout in any direction, really. So actually, let's go back here. But we ended up retesting it. But now the question, of course, comes, well, when the candle was looking like this, let me actually go back to see where I was talking about it right here. This is what the candle looked like. You can see right here, right? I was talking about how it's getting close to collapsing back in the channel. And if that happens, it would not be ideal and makes my potential target of 183 once again a reality. But then I said the same channel, but on a 65-minute chart, and it looks like we're potentially just simply retesting it. So that's important, right? And this is why you want to look at it in other time frames. Because if you look at it like right here, right now, this looks bearish. Like this candle looks really bad and it looks like it's about to collapse back in. But this is when you go to the 65-minute chart and you take another look at the same channel, right? Again, the red line's pretty much the exact same channel, but it gives a much more clearer picture as to what is actually happening here. And pretty much it was just nothing more than, well, a retest, right? I entered some cash secured puts on this retest, obviously looking pretty darn good. I'm just going to continue holding it. I don't think it'll be assigned. It's like a 182.5 put for next week, so I highly doubt it'll be assigned. But nonetheless, beautiful bounce and continuation, and we closed at pretty much very close to the high of the day. But more importantly is we closed this candle higher than any of these candles back here were able to close. And even the ones back here, technically this candle closed even higher than any of these two candles back here. So we're closing at overall levels that we were unable to previously close at before, constantly going higher slowly but surely. That's a good sign. So that's kind of what you want to look at, right? And that's kind of what I'm overall paying attention to. Now, there's going to be a little bit of sign for caution here, right? And there's two things that are, things that are essentially a sign for caution. The one is the more obvious one, right? Which of course is going to be, well, let's look at it on the daily chart actually. It's going to be, well, this overall just area of resistance that we are pretty much entering right here or right now, right? We entered it once over here, got severely rejected, and then we had continuation rather on the sell-off. But what do we see here? Well, we're back into that area. Now, again, this candle looks a lot stronger than any of these candles back here that we're pretty much trading around that price range, which is a good sign. However, this is still a potential area for at least some rejection, right? Don't forget, we had the nice little bounce and support over here, pretty much around 194 to 195 is that $1-ish price range is what you want to be looking at, which essentially is this massive green rectangle that I have right here as well. And like I said, we're entering that right now. That to me, two things is one level, the level that if it's a place to still somewhat reject that would be it, right? But two, it's also the level to break. Why is this the level to break? Like, why is this level so important? Well, ever since this downtrend began, we've just been constantly setting lower lows, lower highs. Like, it's pretty steep lower lows, lower highs. Like, I mean, we hardly set any highs. We just pretty much constantly set lower lows. But, the point is the fact that technically speaking, it's still constantly lower highs, lower lows, right? Let's go ahead and visualize it. What the hell's going on here? Go ahead and fix that up here. Let me go ahead and bring this up, right? So let's say we start up here, we go here, we set a super small high over here, then we went much lower, set a very small lower high here, then we set a lower low, set a very small lower high here, set another lower low, and now we're technically still setting a lower high here, right? This is why this is important. This area, if we break above this candle and pretty much re-enter, let's just say 195 to make it nice and simple, we now officially really truly break the trend. Like the first break the trend, like I mentioned, was breaking this yellow line, because it shows that the steepness of the decline and really just overall the harshness decline has finished, at least in theory. But to really truly see like an actual trend shift, because this doesn't mean the trend has shifted, it just means that, well, we just stopped crashing. To really see a trend shift and to really see Tesla really start recovering, and the momentum and the sentiment and all that to really start to shift truly back into the bullish sentiments, well, that's going to be simply a break of what the previous higher high was on the downtrend, which again, like I said, is pretty much around that 195-ish level, to make it simple. Because again, if we break that, we now officially have broken this higher high over here, or sorry, lower high, and we can officially start the new trend back upwards. Pretty much the same way that we did this one to the downside, but just now to the upside. Maybe it won't be this severe to the upside. It may. You never know with Tesla. This thing moves up and down pretty substantially when it really wants to. But that's kind of the idea that you want to look at. So again, the main thing I'll be looking at for next week, and I do think it'll break it because we'll talk about a few other things, is of course going to be essentially breaking 195. If we break above that, I think the bullish sentiment is returned. Tesla should be looking great. And at the very least, I think we'll come back up to gap fill over here at the earnings gap at about 207. Like I'd be surprised if that doesn't happen, assuming like we get that candle closure above 195, let's say sometime next week. So that's going to be the first thing I'll be looking for, right? That's the main thing I'll be looking for. But with that being said, let's take a look at the weekly. This gives us an overall better time for idea as to what's happening. So on the weekly, we have a bullish engulfing candle, right? We completely engulfed the previous candle, which was a doji candle, which is good to see, right? We have a arguably, I don't know if I'd call this a hammer candle. Like it looks kind of like a hammer candle, but the issue here, this hammer candle, is that the body is way too large relative to the wick below it. So I don't know. It looks like a hammer candle. It has the properties of a hammer candle, but it doesn't have the exact things, essentially, I guess, if you will, that would need for this to truly be classified as a hammer candle. But nonetheless, it still looks like an absolutely bullish candle, regardless, just showing how the bulls absolutely destroyed this week and completely took control over the bears, because we clearly dropped substantially lower. Not only did we recover all of that drop, but pretty much doubled it back to the upside as well. So that's a good sign to see. That's what this candle is showing. And it's a very powerful, very strong, very bullish looking hammer candle. I really just don't see how you can deny that. But again, one thing I'm worried about is that this rally does, commence back to the upside, right? Like I said, the main target, well, the first target rather, is the gap of the earnings gap at about, 210, we'll say roughly. Post that, I really do believe that close to 220 is possible, where the 200 moving averages, right? That is a very real possibility. And if we break above that, that's when I think we can really, really start to come in and truly start testing this this little breakdown that we had on the weekly, right? This massive, trend that we had ever since the lows back here. We kind of kept zigzagging upwards, and we did break down below it. So overall, Tesla's still bearish. Like even though we get this rally back up, it's still bearish. The only time Tesla turns bullish overall, like truly, like overall, like medium to potentially even longer term, to truly turn bullish again, it would need to break this upper trend right here. But we're potentially entering what could be an inflection point sometime early March. And the reason I say that is because, so like I said, if we come back up to this 200 moving average about 220, and let's say we break above that, cool, we come back to the trend line, and that's going to be somewhere in the 220s to as high as about 235. But notice that the 230s is where the 200 moving or daily moving averages, right? You can see it's actually moving its way upwards, interestingly enough, right here. As we move upwards right here, this is actually starting to peek its head back upwards. It's starting to curl back upwards. So it's currently sitting at about 232, 233. And if we do make our way back up, especially pretty sharply, well, we're going to be meeting it somewhere in the low to mid 230s, right? Which is pretty much where we coincide on the weekly to retest this overall trend line, right? That would put us somewhere in around the 230s, depending on really just when it happens, but somewhere in the 230s. That is a possibility. But what makes this really interesting, and what I wouldn't be surprised to see happen, and this is like the bullish take would be, let's say, just as a rough demonstration, let's say we do come up here, and let's say we do come up and test something like this. And let's say we reject, and let's say we come back down maybe somewhere around here, and we find support once again, like the 210s, whatever. And then we come back up early March to somewhere around here. Now, this is where things get interesting, because if something like this plays out, in theory, of course, what this means is the fact that we're still technically bearish because we're still in a downtrend. We're still in this channel, right? Technically, this channel is a bearish channel because we're downtrending in it. But we're also bearish technically still because, well, we broke out of this trend over here, this one that I just showed you right now, that we're pretty much retesting on this move right here. But one thing that can potentially happen which is kind of similar to what we potentially almost had happen earlier, is going to be the kind of, remember on the daily, remember if I zoom out entirely, you have this red line, remember how it was kind of coinciding, and if we broke above that, that would have been great at 265, remember that, like double resistance point. Well, we're potentially doing a similar thing over here, where if we come up like this, we'll be not only retesting once again this uptrend line that we broke down below on this massive sell-off here, but we would also be testing once again the resistance of the overall since all-time highs resistance trend line as well, and that could be pretty interesting. Now obviously that would be a substantial resistance, and again similar to that 265 level I talked about a few weeks ago, or like at this point a couple months ago even, a lot of resistance. It'll be extremely difficult to break. But if in theory Tesla breaks this specific situation like this, let's say it does play out like this, maybe like early March roughly, that would be very bullish, and I think Tesla is ready to go up to at least the 300s, if not even start making its way to closer to the 400s even. But again, there's a lot of work to be done. This is just kind of thinking way ahead. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. I'm not saying it's going to happen. There's a possibility it will. There's a possibility it won't. Honestly, I think the higher chance of what might actually happen is, since Tesla's still bearish, I think that there's a potential that we do come up pretty nicely to, like, let's say 230. I don't think it's completely out of the equation. I don't think it's completely outlandish, but we come up to somewhere around this general area, get an overall rejection here, and then there's still a possibility we make our way down once again, even lower to the 160s, potentially even closer to the 150s. That is not completely impossible, because Tesla is still technically overall bearish, and until we break out of this all-time high resistance trend line, at the bare minimum, Tesla's bearish. Tesla's just simply bearish, and that's just the way it is, even though short term here we're looking like we're ready for a reversal, and short term to potentially maybe medium term, if you will, a couple months or so, bullish. So anyway, that's the main way I'm looking at it, and that's the main things I am overall taking a look at, right? So let's take a look at options flow next very quickly here. So the main thing to look at for options flow, of course, is going to be, well, I set it to 500k plus premium. There's a few interesting things that are making me like really scratch my head here. So we have, you can see two golden sweeps over here. Both of them are above the ask with a pretty nice premium, 1.2 million, 2.3 million. One was pretty much at 10 in the morning, and the other one was at about 2:30 p.m. They're both puts, right? They're both puts, both substantial premiums. 210 put, for instance, let's say over here for the 2.3 million, right? For expiring next week. Like, that's interesting. Okay. I mean, Tesla didn't really fall after this one. After they bought, Tesla hardly fell. It pretty much went sideways, and then if anything, actually went slightly up. So that's interesting. You know, what are they thinking? Do they think that maybe, because I think if I'm not mistaken, we have CPI next week, I think like Wednesday or something, maybe there'll be a little bit of a market drawdown, including Tesla, of course, as there's a little bit of fear and, uncertainty, if you will, going into CPI, and potentially we get that little drawdown, which I think is possible, right? Like I said, we are entering a pretty massive resistance here. There's a possibility we do have a bit of a sell-off, right? Nothing crazy, of course, nothing crazy, but a little bit of a sell-off. Maybe, we come up a little bit higher potentially, but then we ultimately come back down and sell off and retest this area that we just broke out of at about, 190, 189, something like that. Potentially, what's going on? Potentially get a retest of something like that, and then we move back up, right? So something like this. Let me just redraw it so make sure it's very clear, right? Something like this is, in my opinion, a very real possibility. And maybe they're betting on this little drawdown over here. I don't know. Who knows what the actual intent is behind those options? But important to understand that, it's pretty sizable. It makes you wonder. And it's showing urgency. It's for next week's expiration. It's pretty much a week out. So, that's interesting. It's a lot of premium to be betting on for such a short move. I mean, it is an in-the-money put, but nonetheless, very short-dated, right? But with that being said, we also have two bullish calls here, 1.8 million and 1.9 million, 200 calls. Granted, they're a lot safer because, they are out of the money, but hardly. But they're also, one of them is literally a year out. The other one is pretty much like 5 to 6 months out, right? In June of 21. So take it for what it's worth. There's a lot of mixed signals here, but the way I look at it, just strictly through technical analysis, is Tesla looks bullish. I really think it looks bullish. I do think there might be a bit of a, a little bit of a drawdown early next week as we kind of slowly enter CPI and are coming over to CPI. Market cools off a tiny bit, nothing crazy, nothing substantial. Like, for instance, if we come back down to, let's say, 190, 189, it's like 2%, maybe maximum 3% drop. Nothing really for Tesla, right? Nothing to be worried about, in my opinion. But I believe as long as it holds around 190, it just looks like an opportunity to me, and I will personally most likely be entering there. Or if we break above 194 to 195, I will also re-enter on my trading shares. I have my long-term shares that I'm just holding, right? But my trading shares, I will enter on those as well. And that's my main way I'm looking at it. But ultimately, Tesla's looking great. MACD is looking great, looking bullish. RSI is looking bullish. Things are looking great. The weekly MACD is still not looking too great, of course. Still looking overall bearish. The RSI is still overall kind of weak, right? Nothing crazy, nothing to write home about, in all honesty. But the daily and the smaller time frames do look like they want to reverse, and that's the main thing I'm expecting for the next couple of weeks at least, honestly. I really do think that Tesla's looking to reverse, and I really think that those levels I mentioned earlier will be hit sometime in February or early March. But with that being said and done, thank you so much for watching, and as usual, I'll see you for Monday. Peace.